sports fans, and welcome back to another edition of the Pioneers Weekly Football Preview. We're going to get started this week with some high school action. Our big game this week is Chippewa Hills traveling to Morley Stanwood. Looking at the standings, Chippewa Hills coming off, both teams actually coming off a pretty sizable loss. Morley Stanwood falling to Big Rapids on homecoming. Chippewa Hills struggling against a dominating Reed City team. Looking at this matchup, Greg, talk a little bit about first Morley Stanwood and what they need to do to get back on track and after struggling offensively last week.
Yeah, that was the big story of the game last week against Big Rapids, just the struggles on offense. Their defensive play was pretty well throughout the whole game, but just giving up the big plays at certain times and then not being able to do anything on offense, what really cost them. So, heading into this week against Chippewa Hills, obviously, if they're going to want to do anything, they're going to have to get that offensive game going. Because if they're going to want to come out with a win, you got to put some points on the board.
Now, Chippewa Hills, team that also struggled offensively last week, still a team that with only 3 losses can still be playoff eligible. Do you still feel like this is a playoff type team? Looking at 6 weeks into the season.
I think they have a shot at it. I'd put it about 50-50 right now, but like you said, they've got to win out the last 3 games here to get the qualification for the playoff berth.
Your thoughts on who wins this one this week?
I think this is another one, like any other game in CSA, besides, whenever Reed City's playing anybody, but I have noticed that, whenever these teams meet up, it's pretty much whoever can come out that day and get things going on offense, because a lot of these teams are pretty similar on defense, but it all comes down to the offensive execution. So I think Chip Hills just has a few more playmakers on offense so they consistently get plays from. I think that's going to be the big determining factor in the end there. Slim game, maybe win by a touchdown perhaps.
Yeah, I see Chippewa Hills, mainly just based on numbers. They have a little bit more depth than Morley Stanwood. The thing we've noticed with the Mohawks is, start to wear down as the game goes on. I think that's going to be a factor in this one as well. I see this game being close for the first half, and then Chippewa Hills pulling away by a couple scores late. Our other big matchup this week has Reed City traveling to Hesperia, a game that not a lot of people in the preseason thought would have been a big game in the scheme of the CSAA standings, but obviously Hesperia is impressed. They've picked up some big wins this season, including one over Big Rapids, a sizable win there. They're still looking to get playoff eligible. Your thoughts on this one and what Reed City needs to do to remain undefeated?
I think Reed City's going to want to watch out because obviously, like you said, Hesperia is at the top of the league there with only 2 league losses, but they got smacked around last week by Lakeview. And Lakeview is a team that the Coyotes kind of struggle with there at first, but they put them away in the second half. And I think that's going to be the type of situation here heading into this game. I think the Coyotes and Hesperia are going to match up pretty well. But I think just like the whole season's been going here, the Coyotes find a way coming out of the half to really put teams away. So I think that's going to be the case of this Friday's game as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing you're going to have to watch in this game is Reed City, 3 weeks in a row have kind of gone through the ringer of the CSA schedule almost consecutively, starting with Newaygo, then Lakeview, and then last week with Chippewa Hills. Probably the top 3 teams in the league. Yeah. Taking Hesperia into consideration, also into that equation, I think Reed City finds a way to get it done. But I think this could end up being a messy game for them and a little bit tighter than anticipated. I do think Reed City pulls it out in the end. All right, shifting our focus now to the NFL, and with me is Brandon Fountain to talk about the Lions this week. Obviously, the Lions struggled last week without Calvin Johnson in the lineup. I think what we've seen so far from this Detroit team has been, you got Reggie Bush, you got Calvin Johnson. You need them both playing to be an effective, more balanced offense. What are some of your keys coming into this week against a Cleveland team that has exceeded a lot of people's expectations this year?
Well, like you said, you need to have Reggie Bush and Calvin Johnson playing at the same time. They counter punch, go back and forth. And it gives so many more options to Matthew Stafford and Scott Linehan. But last week was a complete regression right back to the good old Lions that we all know.
What is going to be the key for this offense to get back on track from what your observations were from last week against Green Bay?
They need to continue to pound the ball, something that they got rid of or away from last week. You could have Reggie Bush or Joyke Bell actually run. But they seem to depend on the pass, and that it failed miserably because they didn't have any big target.
Your thoughts on who wins this one this week?
I am actually going to pick the Lions. They should win, even without Johnson. If he doesn't play, I think they still win. But you never know who you're going to get on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also going with the Lions in this one. Sticking to my guns on this. I think a big factor in this is Cleveland losing starting quarterback Brian Hoyer, who really had provided a spark to that team after they made the trade for Trent Richardson. He gave them a little bit more of an offensive threat. I think Cleveland's going to struggle a little bit in that regard against a Lions defense that's been pretty much up to the task, I would say, for the most part. I'll say the Lions pull out a tight one this weekend. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Pioneer Weekly Football Preview. As always, make sure to check out the weekend edition of the Pioneer for results from all of our high school coverage, or check out BigRapidsNews.com.